Hey everybody, this is Ryan, and welcome to another episode of Terraria Interviews, and today I am lucky enough to be joined by Topazg. Say hey, Topazg.
Hey Dan.
Alright, so you created the Toparia mod, which is, it's incredibly unique. It's a lot different from the T-config stuff. And so, what was it about Terraria that made you want to make this mod?
I think really, I've played Terraria since basically the beta, and it's been something I've always found interesting as a concept, a kind of 2D sort of platform game where you've got sort of this open sandbox thing, random world generation. I'm a big fan of random generation of all kinds, so I sat there playing it and I sort of got more and more into it up to probably end gameplay. I'm really enjoying it, but what's missing, from my point of view, there's something that's just not quite there in the vanilla experience. And I figured one of the biggest things is, even though there's replayability, because you've got all this randomness going on, there's not much difference. Every time you play it, you basically do the same thing, you craft the same stuff in the same order, you kill the same bosses, you go through to the end, and, well, I'll do a mod for Terraria and I'll bring in some classes and see how it goes. And it sort of... It went from there. I never really expected it to be a popular mod or have anyone really sort of interested in it carrying on, but it went from one stage to the next and ended up sort of roughly where it is now.
Would you like to try to explain a little bit how the leveling system works?
Yeah, my idea has always been that if you want to be, say, a sword fighter or something, then use swords lots, you'll get better at it. So I tried to build a system that encouraged use of the sorts of weapons you wanted to be, and the more you used them and the harder monsters you fought using them, the stronger you got at those skills. Then the class idea was in to make sure that some players could naturally get extremely good at one thing, but at the cost of not being very good at the others. So you ended up with sort of multi-class roles that were quite good at more than one thing, and specialist roles that got pretty much overpowered in one thing, but were rubbish at everything else. From there, it really turned into how can you make the classes more interesting. So when your melee skill or whatever reaches a certain value, I actually used values of 10, so the skill ranges from 0 to 50, but every 10 levels you gain extra skills that you can purchase the components for and build together, just because that's part of what makes Terraria fun, that give you extra bonuses. Like the top level mage one is he can turn on a gravitation potion effect whenever he like.
How did you go about coming up with the different skills?
Waved my finger in the air and guessed as to what sounded interesting and vaguely class relevant, I think. To some extent, some of the skills sort of make sense. If you're going to play a ninja type class, you want things like movement speed, jump height, because it sounds like what a ninja does. It was really a case of having my mind's eye of a stereotype of what one of these characters would look like and finding skills that sort of broadly fit into that class's playstyle.
What is your favorite class and your least favorite class that you created?
Very hard one to answer. I suppose probably my least favourite, because I kind of almost wish it wasn't in there, is the demigod, and that's mostly because it can go to the absolute max level and everything and ends up so obscenely overpowered that you don't have to be very good at the game to kill endgame bosses by yourself. Now I put it in there because some of my children play the game and they're not very good. They're quite young and they kind of struggle with it. So I wanted a class in there that meant that everyone could get quite a long way through the game without needing to party up with it. My favourite class is probably the ninja, and I can't quite put my finger on why. It's not as powerful as the wizard. The specialist mage is probably the most powerful class in the game. It gets really very powerful, but there's something fun about just throwing ninja stars at everyone. I made sure they were craftable as well, because otherwise you can run a bit short of ninja ammo. But there's something about sort of running off, shooting, throwing knives at everybody and then going off and hiding again with this insane amount of speed that just appeals to me.
What was your process of balancing the amount of experience you got?
Trial and error, mostly playing through it. I had a few ideas of sort of algorithms that would semi-balance, and I figured that one of the best ways of balancing it was made sure that as you progressed through the game, as your level went up, the sorts of levels of monsters you had to fight to gain any more experience had changed too. So if you're fighting early game monsters when you're level 0, you'll gain loads of experience for them. If you're fighting them when you're level 25, then you'll gain almost nothing.
Have you ever considered adding new monsters for people to fight?
I have. It's always a tricky one. There's lots of ideas I had that never came to fruition and may or may not happen now. We will have to see. I've got a few ideas around what I'm going to do after the 1.2 update. The problem with doing monsters is I'm an anal perfectionist, really, and they have to be right. It's just, I know I'd end up being permanently frustrated, and I could probably sink 80% of my time over a few months into just doing 1 or 2 mobs. And I'd actually, looking back at how I spent my time previously, I think if I'm going to go through it again, I'm going to make sure more of my time is spent on making the mechanics interesting, having skills, perks, traits, that kind of thing.
Do you have any content updates coming anytime soon?
So I'm basically sitting on it and doing absolutely nothing until 1.2 comes out. It sounds a bit odd, but I'm actually quite disappointed with a lot of parts of Toparia. It was like I sort of half did a lot of the things I wanted to do, and it never quite ended up where I wanted it to be. So from the very beginning, I'm going to have race selection and class selection. I'm going to have stats. I'm going to have abilities. I'm going to have things that start to feel like the character you've picked from the beginning.
Have there been any features that you wanted to add but you couldn't?
Yeah, lots. I mean, the list is endless. I mean, one of the ideas I really wanted to do was like little pocket dungeons where you'd get to a point where you could unlock one of various difficulty levels. You might find like a portal sort of naturally spawning in the caves, and you go through it and you'd have like a sort of one-off dungeon experience, maybe a boss, maybe some loot, and then you go back to the main world and you keep exploring until you find another one. And then you realize you've got to sprite virtually every single new mob, perhaps a few terrain types. You've got to code some dungeon generation from scratch. You've got, if there's a boss monster, what's his AI going to be? He wants to be a bit different, otherwise you're doing the same thing. So it just escalates and escalates, and you can put 1,000 hours of programming time into doing what ends up being a fairly small part of your game.
Have you been following the 1.2 updates?
On and off. I mean, I've seen most of the trailer and teaser videos, and hats off to them. I just don't know quite how they managed to creative ideas, some of which are almost entirely sort of cosmetic, look so much fun. There's the waterfalls, there's colouring of walls, there's a little bit in there for everyone, it seems, and it also, from what I gather, looks like they're working towards a sort of more finalised content. You feel like you've done the game with an end boss. This hard mode dungeon thing sounds interesting. It certainly captured my attention more than I had figured it was going to do.
Very cool. And I got a few questions from Twitter here. Is there anyone in the modding community that has helped you out that you maybe want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I mean, there's one person more than anyone, because his help with graphics, his help with just there being around chatting has been immense, and also he's been let down a bit by me because there's a couple of projects I've tried to work on with him and I've just ran out of time, although it sounds like he's found his feet from where he is from where he is now, which is Flebas, who's just been an amazing part of the community. The other one whose contributions on the coding scene I think just simply cannot be understated is Yorai, who's not only got the competence for it, but is genuinely helpful in his own inimitable style. He's actually incredibly good at picking up on, a new person trying out modding for the first time, and there you go, he pops up and helps. Obviously Surf Pup with tconfig, and some of the maps, I mean, you did Tim's map the other day on one of your earlier videos, and I've never tried it. I hate to say it, I haven't actually gone and done it, but it's something which I've really wanted to do. It's something I tend not to do, because most of these sort of story-driven one-off things tend not to be all that replayable, so I tend not to do them, but it's something I've wanted to do, and a lot of people enjoy it, a lot of people value the contributions, so I think there's a lot to be said for his work as well. I mean, really, it's a great community with a lot of contributors. I could go on for a long time if I named everyone.
When you sat down to start this, did you have a goal in mind, or did you just kind of take it one step at a time?
When I started it, all I wanted to do was learn C#. Then I started deciding how I could make Terraria better, and I thought classes and different play styles, and then by the time I'd actually released that, I just had so many ideas. It was a matter of just putting them in priority. New NPCs I wanted, because I decided it'd be nice to have a bigger village that you could sort of make your own, and it really just came from every time I sort of decided, if only this game had this, it immediately went on the to-do list as something to do as soon as I got round to it. So it evolved, my ideas evolved far, far quicker than the mod did.
Well, just on a personal note, I want to say thank you for creating this. It added an entirely new dimension that was so cool, and I think it was something that a lot of people were really, really dying to have in this game. So thank you for all the effort and time you put into it.
No problem at all. Thank you for doing the interviews. It was a great idea of yours.
Alright guys, that is going to do it for this video. If you have anybody you might want to hear talk about their mod or their adventure map, just leave their name down in the comments below. And if you leave a comment in this video, you will be entered for a chance to win a PC copy of Terraria. All you have to do is leave a comment. So that'll do it. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. And until next time, see you guys.